Hey everyone, welcome and thanks for joining me again today. We're going to jump right into some projects. I'm very excited about today's session. We're going to be working with some things that you haven't seen me do before. So let me open up my Photoshop. Um, so I'm very excited to kind of get back to working with Nic a little bit. That was my first plugin software about 16 years ago at our New England regional conference. I had seen that demonstrated and purchased it right away. They had the just Color Effects Pro at that point, and it for a long time was one of my favorite pieces of software. Tony Sweet had demonstrated it there and just made it look fabulous, which it is. And then as I got more into using various Topaz software, I kind of got away from some of that. So they did have an update just a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't going to purchase it because I didn't have the latest to get it for free, I guess. But after looking at the upgrades that they had, I decided to go ahead and do it, and I'm glad I did. And I'll point out a few of those things that I like as we go along today. And the other thing I'm going to show you today is Lumen R4. And that's a software, I'm not even sure where I got it or when I got it. It's one of those ones that's been on my computer and I haven't really had a whole lot of time to play around with it. And they also had an upgrade. It was a free upgrade about a couple weeks ago, I guess. And I had heard from other actually webinar watchers and students that their sky replacement with the AI was just great. And I hadn't tried it and I did. And oh my gosh, you are going to be amazed if you've never seen this happen. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into our first project. I have 6 things scheduled for you, and hopefully we can get through all of these. As I have been doing with my sessions, I do have the notes with the images and textures available for just $5 in the store, and I'll show you a bunch of links on the last slide with some other discounts because I've got a summer sale starting today and some new textures I just released today as well. Alrighty, so this barn is over near the Smokies. This is in Wares Valley. Dave and I did go down there for a few days at the beginning of June, and this is one we kind of stumbled upon right alongside the road. And of course, it's a cool shop, but you know me, and you know that I just love to do other things, especially with old buildings. So I brought this into Photoshop. I do all my basic stuff in Lightroom. So I'm not going to show you that part of it because this isn't really a Lightroom class, but I usually do my basic tweaking there. Some of you use Camera Raw, which is pretty much the same thing. Whatever way you want to get to your basic photo is perfectly fine. So I've come into Photoshop with it and I've duplicated my background layer, which I always do. And I'm going to first take this into Studio 2 because I pretty much start there still all the time because I still like my AI clear. And you've heard me talk about this before if you've watched any of my webinars. So I'm just going to go into Add a Filter. And I have just my favorites showing, so it looks like a shorter list. And I'm going to select my AI clear. And 99% of the time, the default works great. And what AI clear is doing is adding some detail, clarity, and denoise all at the same time. And it's the greatest thing. I never do any, the unsharp mask or any of that kind of sharpening. I do AI clear. And if I need a little more punch or so, a little more sharpness, I will then go into add a filter again and do precision detail. And I'll do that on another image. This one is pretty good like it is. So I'm just going to accept this to come back to Photoshop. And I like to work mostly with Topaz as a plugin. You can use it as a standalone, so you can fully edit an image in there if you choose to. I just like to keep my layers, and usually I'll go back and name what I've done on a layer just so I remember. That's not necessary, but it's just, especially if I think I might use this in a class, I will do that. So I've got 2 screens open here. I work with 2 monitors, so you're going to see me drag things in and go, how'd you get that over there? And that's because I'm dragging from my second monitor because I have things all lined up and ready to go for today. Actually, I forgot I need to go back to Topaz because I do want to add a preset. I got so busy talking, I wasn't reading my notes. So let's go back into Topaz. And I am going to add what they call a look, which used to be called presets. So we're going to go into add a look. And this one is under the category Moody. And it's called Gothic Gleam. And it kind of gives it a little bit of a faded look. I love what the older barns and buildings to go for that kind of vintagey, grungy kind of look. So once we select it, we're going to hit apply, and it's taken a second to catch up. There we go. So within this preset, these are the functions that make up that preset. So you could go in and fine tune this more if you wanted to. You could click on remix and choose a different preset, the abstraction, the color tuning. I like this the way it is, so I'm not going to change anything there. I am, however, going to add another texture to this. So I'm going to click on Add a Filter, Texture, and under Category, I'm going to choose Meredith Images. And if you're not already aware, there are 59 of my textures that come with Studio that Topaz purchased from me and added to the program, which was a rather cool thing. I know I didn't get rich on it, but it was nice to be able to see, you know, some of your work show up like that. So I'm going to use this one called Granite, and I am going to change my blending mode from normal to multiply, which is a darkening mode. And then I'm going to lower the opacity just a little bit to 40% or thereabouts. Alrighty, so now we're good over here. So now we're going to go back to Photoshop. And I'm going to bring in one of my grunge textures. This was from one of the groups that was released maybe a month or so ago. And this is actually one from the set that consisted of brushes and textures. So you could apply this as a brush or drag in the texture. Right now I'm using the texture. And this is a PNG, so there is some transparent area. Of course, that doesn't look very good, so we're going to make some changes here. I'm actually going to change the color of this texture. So I'm going to click on my foreground color picker. And because I know what color I'm going to want, I'm going to hit the number. And I only know that because when I chose it before, I then wrote down that number. And now I want to fill this layer with the color. And I need to vectorize or rasterize it because it came in as a smart object. I want to fill this layer with color, but if I just do my usual Alt backspace, which I'll show you, it's going to fill the whole layer, which is not what we want. We only want to fill the areas that the pixels contain color. So there's two ways we can do this. The way I've usually been doing it is by clicking the little lock button right above the layer panel here. If you click that and lock that layer and do the Alt backspace, it then just fills those pixels with color. The other way to do it without the lock button is if you hold down the Shift key when you do the Alt backspace, and that would be Option backspace on actually to fill a layer on a Mac, it's Option Delete. So it'd be Shift Option Delete or Shift Alt backspace on a PC. So either way does the same thing, and it just fills those particular pixels with color. Obviously, we don't want it to look like that, so we're going to change the blending mode to soft light and lower our opacity a little bit to about 59–60%. So just to add a little more grunge to it. Border with a crop shape. So I need to have a combined image of all of these layers together. And the way that we do that is by hitting Control, Alt, Shift, and the letter E. And oh, let me make sure I'm on the right thing here because it's not doing it. That's not what I want. All right, Control, Alt, Shift, E. There we go. I just clicked on the wrong screen. All right, so now this layer contains everything that's beneath it. So I'm going to turn these off because I want you to see the effect of the border when I bring it in. So I am going to, let me move everything back around here the way I had it. Hang on one second. Okay, everybody make sure that you are muted. I think everybody should be. But if you could just make sure that you are muted. I don't think anybody is able to speak but me. Alrighty, so I am going to bring in one of my crop shapes, and I'm dragging this from the other screen. And we're going to create a border with this crop shape. And I'm going to stretch it out to the image. And I'm actually going to go a little bit past it because I want the border to be closer to the edges. So you can do that when you're stretching these. You can move it out a little bit if you need to. Excuse me. Alrighty, so now I have this there. So I want the shape beneath my merged layer. So I'm going to drag that down in my layers panel. And then I'm going to click on my shape, and I want to group this or clip this with that mask. And I'm going to do that with Control, Alt, and the letter G for grouping. And when you do that, you'll see that the layer thumbnail moves to the right, and you get a little downward facing arrow right there on the left of the layer. And that's letting you know that that layer is clipped to that mask. And you can see that now we have a transparent background. And that's why I turned these off, because if this was on, it would look like nothing happened. So now we're going to create a color and a pattern in our border here. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to add a new blank layer. I'm going to bring that under our shape. And I'm going to fill this layer with a solid color. And this time I want to use A99C8C, a lighter tan color. And I actually originally picked this by clicking around in the image. And we're going to say OK. Then I'm going to do my Alt backspace and fill that layer with color. And if you decide once you filled it that you want a different color, just click your foreground color picker again. You can choose something else and do the Alt backspace as many times as you need to get to a color that you like.
Where do you get the border from?
So somebody asked, where did I get this border from? This is from one of my crop shapes packages that are available in the Peacock Studio on our Meredith Images website. Again, I'll put up all the links at the end. But if you go to the website under the Peacock Studio is where all my products are. So all of the textures you're going to see me working with today are from my own packages, and they are available on the website. And if you purchase the notes today, you will get these ones that I'm using on these projects as well. So I'll kind of give you a little taste of some of these if you want to try them out.
What's the Mac equivalent for Alt backspace?
The Mac equivalent for Alt backspace is Option Delete. And the other way you can do that if you want to fill a layer is you just go up under Layer, and you can add a new fill layer. You can do it right here, but with a solid color. And that would add the blank layer for you, and then you could fill it. So there's more than one way, like everything in Photoshop, pretty much there's multiple ways of doing it. So now I want to add a pattern on top of this color. So instead of adding a blank layer, I am going to go up here and I'm going to go Layer, New Fill Layer, and instead of solid color, I'm going to choose Pattern. And I'm just going to say OK. I don't really need to rename it right now. And this was one, and when I typed the notes, I was like, I think this is a default in Photoshop, but then I realized I think this was part of an action that I downloaded that you had to load some patterns for. So this is probably not in Photoshop, but you can add patterns just like you can add actions and things. You can find them online. A lot of times in the Tuesday around the web blog, when I find things, especially freebies, I will post them in there. So there's always tons of stuff that you can find out there on the web. And this one is actually this pretty cool looking old newspaper. And this one I left the scale at 100%, but of course I don't want it to be white. I want to see our color behind that. So I'm going to change our blending mode to multiply. And then I'm going to lower the opacity to about 40%. And again, all of this stuff is in the notes if you want to get them and be able to practice and replicate these projects later. Alrighty, so there is our pattern layer. So now what I want to do is on this crop layer, I want to add a little bit of a drop shadow. And I like to do that when I'm using these shapes, and even when I'm doing type a lot of times I'll do that. And just to me, it makes it look like it's not just like cut out and pasted on another piece of paper. It gives it a little depth. So the way we're going to do that is anywhere in the blank area of this layer. Don't click on the words, don't click on the thumbnail. You got to click in part of this blank gray area. You're going to double click, and that's going to bring up the layer style box. And these are some of the different things that you can do here. And I want to add a drop shadow. Now I've checked this box, but I have to make sure that I select that line to get the proper controls in the center, because it defaults to the controls for the first one in the list. So you got to make sure that that line is highlighted. And I do want a black drop shadow, so that's fine. I like to use the angle 135. Just make sure light comes from the upper left, but you can change that depending on what it is that you're doing. I want the distance is 19. I think it's remembering what I did last when I was practicing this. Spread is 30 and size is 29. And the opacity, yep, so it remembered my settings from when I did this project yesterday. And we're going to say OK. And you can see the drop shadow there. Again, if you want to adjust it and go back, then just you'll see here's that drop shadow we just did. You can just double click next to that and it would reopen the panel, and you could select that layer and go back and make changes. So everything is always changeable. And the one thing I did do once I was done with this is I went back to the pattern layer and I decided to drop that even more to about 30%. I just wanted a hint of something back there. Yeah, it looks a little busy, but I just thought it was kind of cool and fitting for this old barn. You can always do something different. There's tons of patterns that do come within Photoshop. So, you know, poke around and see what you find. So that is our first project. And since we got interrupted, I probably will run a little longer, but that's fine. I have the webinar timing so that we can do that. So if you want to hang with me, we're going to get through all these projects. I'll try and I like to go fast enough, but I don't want to go too fast so people can see what I'm doing. So I'm opening up our next image. And this is a fern. When we were down in the Smokies, we were just walking around along the roadside and I saw this, and I didn't even realize till after I processed it, this little heart leaf behind it. I thought that was very cute. So I'm going to do some cool stuff with this, and for this one I'm going to start with AI Clear, but then we're going to work with some Nic stuff. So I'm going to duplicate my layer, Control J. I use the keyboard shortcut. There's like 5 ways you can duplicate a layer. And we're going to go to our studio and add our AI Clear. Filter AI Clear. And then the blue bar always shows you that it's processing. And I'm just going to accept that and go back to Photoshop. Now, when you use the Nic products, you don't have to worry about duplicating layers because it automatically adds its own layer, which is kind of neat. One of the things that's neat with this new upgrade is it used to be kind of a floating toolbar, but now when I reduce it, I was actually able to place it down here and it stays there. I think it's also cool. They have some of their own webinars that they're doing with the new products, and they tell you the next one right here at the top of this box. I just noticed that yesterday, which was cool. So these are all of the products that are contained within the full Nic suite. For this one, I'm going to be starting with Viveza, and that is right here. And Viveza is very cool. It lets you work with basically the brightness, the contrast, the colors. It's really to pump up the color and perfect your color in your image. So for this one, I'm moving my saturation to about 10% and structure, which is kind of like a sharpening or a detail, to 22%. And then in the curves, I made a couple changes. I brought, and I'm trying to do this from the screenshot I have in my notes. I brought this down a little bit to darken the background, and then I want to brighten my greens a little bit, kind of like that. And we're going to say OK, and that's going to bring us back to Photoshop. And you can see the before and the after, how much that really made that pretty springy green kind of jump out there. And the next thing I want to do is I'm going to go into Color Effects Pro 4, which again was the first product they had and the first one I started with way back when. And this is basically a bunch of filters. So they're not really presets, but you can create your own preset by combining filters. So for this one, I'm going to go into the filter library. You can either look at all of them or you could kind of go by categories. So if you want to look at a shorter list, I used nature and midnight. And I thought this was pretty cool. And I am going to make a few changes. So the blur I brought back to about 29%. I didn't want it quite that blurred. Contrast brought back just a teeny bit. Brightness, we're going to go a little bit brighter. And then color, we're going to leave it 60%. And I did want to change the color set to green, actually. And there we go. And we're going to say OK. And that's going to bring us back to Photoshop. And I decided that this needed a quote to fill in some of this empty space over here. So the fonts that I have, I've probably added in. I don't think these are default fonts, but you can choose whatever you like. I used to be a typesetter, so I'm a little bit of a type nerd. And I like to make my type fit together certain ways and stuff. So I'm going to start with one called Poor Richard, which is this one. And I'm going to change the color to a green. 529 C2F. I wanted to kind of match the color of the leaves. And you'll see in the notes, I ended up with an odd point size. It was like 33.73. That's because I stretched the type after I typed it. So I'm going to just kind of round that to 34 point. And I want my type to be flush right. And I'm going to just kind of click where I think I want to start. And the quote is, if you truly love. And then I'm going to, the word nature, which comes next, I'm going to put in a different typeface. And I learned a trick with on one of my other webinars. I was having a hard time changing the font without it changing the words I already did. And thanks to Pat Reck from Arizona, who I know is listening, she was on one of our workshops with us. And the posse, which is her dog posse, the Labradors. But thanks for this tip. When you want to change fonts, before you click to start the next line, if you hold the Shift key and click, it will add a new layer, and then you can go in and change the font without it changing what you've already done, which is very important because I used to get so frustrated with type. It drove me crazy. So this one I'm going to use, it's called Master Break, and I want this to be a larger font, or point size. So we're going to make this one 54, and same color, and now I'm going to type my, oh, come on, course, it's still going to give me agita, right? All right, there we go, nature. And then once you type it, you can always double click it to highlight it and move it around and line things up. So that is our layer there. I can get rid of that one. And then I want to go back to the typeface I had before. So instead of resetting everything, I'm going to click on this layer and duplicate it. I'll just drag it on top so it kind of keeps it in order. And then I'm going to use my move tool, move this one down, and then I can just change the words. I'll double click it, and this will be "you will see beauty." And then I also want to duplicate now the nature layer. Use my move tool, bring this down, highlight that one. All right, so that is our quote. And then I did do one other line. We're going to do, let's see, I want to click my type tool, hold my shift key, click over here. I want to put who the quote was by. And we're going to use, and I used Amaranth, Italic at 16 point. And I used the tilde, and this is by Laura Ingalls Wilder. And so again, I can use my move tool, and I'm going to move this up a little bit and over. And I'm, like I said, I'm a little picky with all of this, but I'm going to highlight all of these. And as one, I just want to move this up a little bit, get it into place. And then the other thing now I want to do is do a stroke of a lighter color around the letters. So again, we're going to get the layer styles box. We're going to double click on our first layer. I want to do a stroke, and let me get to my notes here. I actually want to use this lighter green is already here. It's remembering it from before. I want to do a 3 pixel inside. Yep, that's correct. And I also want to do a bevel and emboss. I like to do that on type a lot of times, and it just kind of gives it some shadows. You'll see it more on the larger type in a second. Let's see, I think, yep, it's remembered all my settings, so I'm going to say OK. So again, instead of having to do this to each layer, I'm going to right click on this layer and say copy layer style, highlight all of my other type layers, and right click and say paste layer style. And voila, just like that, they're all completed. And I'll zoom in a little. You can see, kind of get that shadow there from the bevel and emboss. It just gives your letters a little bit of a 3D effect, and I really like that when I'm doing type. And that would be the end of that project. I had, what's up? Okay, we have 2 questions.
First one, these icons.
Yes, somebody wanted to know what these icons are, and these are other plug-in panels that I have. One is for font management. One is, these are from, oh gosh, Color Picker is the company. If you want to know more about it, you can message me and I'll send you that. And these are my group brushes, which I use, and these are just different panels. These are Studio Magic, some other cool software that I have. What's the other question?
The board wants to know what's the difference between the new Nic and the old stuff.
The difference between the new Nic and the old one. They did a lot of upgrades to each product, and to me, they actually have some tutorials, and if you go to their website, it tells you what all of the upgrades are. This is totally new, this perspective effects, where you can correct perspective on things. I haven't delved into all of them yet, but I like the panel. They do have a noise reduction as well, which is pretty cool. And I have used this analog effect. I think I used that in one of the other projects to give us some other cool effects. So I can't really delve into all of that right now, but definitely take a look at their website because they do have some tutorials on the new products as well. So right click on a Mac to change these. That's a good question. I'm not a Mac user. I will have to check that. If you want to send me an email, I will be happy to look that up for you.
Or maybe somebody will answer.
Or if somebody out there knows it, if you want to type it in the box, one of our other Mac users. Control click. Somebody did type it in there. There you go. So it's control, hold the control key and then click on that line. And that would be the same as a right click on a PC. Thank you very much to whoever answered that. I appreciate that. All righty. Next project. Queen Anne's lace. I know these are weeds, but I just absolutely love these flowers. I think they're just so pretty. And this one hasn't even opened yet. And I love the way that it's just kind of delicate and soft. So I'm going to hit my Control J, duplicate this. Now what I want to do is I want to, even though the background is fairly blurred, I wanted to blur it just a hair more. So I'm going to make a selection of the flower and put that on another layer so that I can come back and blur this layer. So the way we're going to do this selection, and this is an updated tool in Photoshop because they've also had some upgrades recently with the CC 2020. So I'm going to choose under the quick selection tool, if you right click that, the object selection tool, and then I'm going to use these settings under lasso, enhance edge, object subtract. I don't really need to sample all layers in this case, and I'm going to just click on select subject, and it's basically going to look for the subject in your image. There's been sometimes I've tried this and it doesn't work perfectly, but it's worth a shot and it definitely can save you some time. And you can see it did a pretty good job. It didn't select all the stems, so I'm going to go back over to the toolbar and select the quick selection tool. When you're adding to a selection, you're going to hold the shift key down. So I'm just going to hold the shift and I'm going to run my cursor right down there, select the rest of that stem, and I'm going to zoom in a little, and I'm also going to hold it down. And I wasn't too particular with all of these little edges, but if you want to try and select those, you can. And then I want to take away this area that it selected here. So I'm going to hold on my Alt key, Option on a Mac, and just do that. Undid a little too much. And there we go. It's kind of rough, but you get the idea. For right now, it will work. So we can move on with our project. So I want to put this subject on a separate layer. So when I first open my images, when I do the Control J, it copies the entire layer. I just saw a part here we want to unselect. Oops. Oh, come on. There we go. Anyway, but when you have a selection made and you do Control J, it only copies the selection to a separate layer. So you can see if I turn these off, there is our flower layer. Okay. I said it's not perfect, but for the moment, it will get us where we want to go. So I want to blur this background just a little bit. And I used to always use the Gaussian blur. And recently I've discovered another blur tool for something like this that I think works even better. So I'm going to go up under Filter. Instead of going to Blur, I'm going to go to Blur Gallery and choose Field Blur. And I just want to do this a little bit. I want to do about 20, 22 pixels. So I'm just softening that background a little bit more. And then I'm going to say OK up here on the top. And that will finish processing. And if I turn this one off, you can see there is the before, there's our after. So it's a little bit softer. You can see I need to go back and select those little edges, but it will give us our look that we need for now. So now I'm going to use some Nic products again. And again, I want a merged layer because I want to affect everything, not just this layer. So I'm going to do that Control-Alt-Shift-E to get my merge layer. And this one I pretty much always rename merged so I know why I have this other layer there. And from this one, I'm going to go back to my Nic, and I'm going to go into my Viveza first. And the thing that I really like about the Nic products, and this has always been kind of their biggest selling point, is you can add what are called control points. And I'm going to add one. I want to choose this flower. So I'm going to put this control point over the flower bud. And you can see I have, these are all of the same sliders that are over here. This top one controls the size of that control point. So basically, and I can move it around so I can get where I want it to be, over that flower bud. So the changes I'm making are going to affect just the flower bud. So I'm going to up my, and I can use these sliders or these. They do the same thing. I think they're easier to see if I use the ones over on the right, probably on the webinar. So I'm going to go up to 13 and contrast, up my saturation just a little. Structure. So this part we're basically sharpening or bringing out a little more detail in the flower bud. Shadow adjustments, I'm actually going to lower that. I want to darken the shadows a little bit. And then I'm going to go into the green channel and up. And this is changing the saturation and the color, the brightness, all of that in there. So that's that part of the image. Now the other cool thing is you can add more than one control point. So I can click on add a control point again, and I want one over this back flower because I want to darken this flower just a little bit and kind of tone it down. So I'm going to move this down to about there. And you don't have to be exact because it actually looks for all of these consistent tones here. So even though the circle doesn't go all the way around, it's going to make that adjustment on this area. And with this one, I want to bring my brightness down. Somebody asked, do I have a discount code for Nic? No, I don't. They do not do an affiliate program that I'm aware of. And so I do not, that is not one that I have a code for. They are, I think it's still pretty inexpensive. The upgrade was like $50-something because I did purchase it a couple of, it's probably a couple of years ago, maybe a year or so, whenever they came out with the last upgrade. So I'm lowering the structure here to soften that more and bringing down the brightness a little bit. So then we're going to say, okay, down here, come back to Photoshop, and then we're going to do color effects, and I'm going to add 2 filters. So again, here's the before. You can see we've brightened up and sharpened up this area and toned down this flower in the back, the white one there. So we've brought that down, the brightness of that one. So we're going to go into our Color Effects Pro. And this one I really wanted something very high key and pastel-y, which is not the look I usually go for, but it really worked for this image. So in this one, we're going to go into the film category, and I'm going to go into Film Effects Vintage. And then over in the right side, I'm going to choose Film Type 6, and you can see there are 28 different styles in this one. So I wanted number 6, and I did grain per pixel at about 400. And I think that's all I changed. Yep, and that's it there. Whoops, and I just zoomed in, even though I didn't plan to do that. Alrighty, and then the other thing I want to do, I want to add a filter. So at the bottom of this panel, we can click on Add Filter. So it's like layering another one on top. I'm going to go into All. I want to choose, how do I get out of this? I want to fit that back down there. There we go. So we can actually see the whole thing, because I'm going to do a Vignette Blur. I'm going to soften those edges a little bit more. I'm going to use shape 2. I want to use type number 4. Obviously that's a little too much, so we're going to make some changes here. Transition 90. The size we're going to bring way down to 25. And the opacity we're also going to lower to about there. Now, this bases the filter on the center point being in the center of the image. But we can, with this filter where it says place center, when I click that, I can tell it where I want it to center this filter, because I want it to be a little less light at the top. So I'm actually going to choose my center about 1/3 of the way up in the flower, kind of right below these buds here. And you can see now it's not such a vignette at the top, it's more at the bottom, but that's okay. But it kind of isn't fading my flower quite as much. You can also save, like I have these 2 filters in a combo now. If I wanted to save that, I could click on Save a Recipe and apply those same 2 filters to another image. So we're going to say OK. Go back to our Photoshop. And there we go. And I did decide to lower the opacity of that layer just a little bit to bring back a little more color. And that's our finished image. So that is our 3rd project. We have a couple questions.
What's between Google Nic and the new Nic?
The difference between the Google Nic and the new Nic. The Google Nic was purchased by DxO software. That's who now owns it. Google then sold it to DxO. So it's basically the same program. If you had the other one, I think when it first happened, there may have been a either free or very reduced upgrade. The upgrade, like I said, that I did about a week or so ago, I think it was like $50-something. And I think that's because I didn't have the last version. So it always, like with any of the software, depends on what your last version is as to what your pricing is. But it is the same product. It's what originally was Nic, and then it became Google, and now it's owned by DxO.
If you do a Nic webinar, you get a discount, help discount. Watch the webinar there.
Okay, Dave said, somebody mentioned if you watch one of the Nic's webinars, you can get a discount code through that. So that might be something to look into if you go to their website and check that out.
Lynn says there's a new version that you can re-edit with the Nic software.
That you can do what with?
Re-edit.
You can re-edit with.
Yeah, so I'm not know what that
Okay,
is.
somebody said with the new version you can re-edit. I will have to look into that because I haven't tried doing that. So, because I have the latest version, so I might be able to do that. We can go back and change something that you did. So that's interesting. Thank you for sharing, everybody. I appreciate that. Alrighty, next project. This is not very far from our house. There is a, it's a restaurant, a catering facility. They have gardens. It's a historic site, an old mill.
Re-edit, same thing.
Hold on.
Smart optics.
Okay. So this is close by, and of course it's an old truck, and of course I'm going to take a picture of that. And we're going to make this look a little more vintagey than it does. Alrighty, so let's go first into our studio. And we're going to use a combination of products in here as well. You're going to see me use Luminar in here as well. Not for the sky replacement yet, that'll be the next project. but I am going to use one of their other presets. So first we're going to do AI Clear. And then I am going to do some precision detail, which I like to just do a little bit, especially on something I want to really bring out the crispness of the detail. So we're going to do precision detail, overall small detail, just about 15 or so, and the medium as well. Not a lot, it's just enough to give a little bit more crispness in there. So we're going to accept that. And we're going to duplicate this. And we're going to go into filter. And Luminar is by Skylum software. This can also be used as a standalone or as a plugin. So it's your choice. You can take something into Luminar and do your full editing there as well. Now, there are some people who don't like to use Photoshop. And this is another product that you can definitely do a full edit right here. So up on top, there is, on this toolbar, there's a tab called Looks. When you click on that, you'll get this film strip of some different presets or looks down here. And I actually wanted to use the one called Morning Fog, which is this one right here. And once you're in there, you can adjust the percentage of that preset if you wish to, but I like to use that one. And then from here, there's like 4 tabs over here. These are their active tabs. So the first one, which is what we're on now, is Essentials, and that lets you control these. And we're going to use some of those in another project. The second one is the creative stuff, and that's where we're going to do sky replacement later. Right now, I'm going to click on the one that says Pro, and I want to use one of the photo filters in here. And this is going to let you control filtering like the color and hue and the saturation. So I'm going to go amount 14, and you'll see this kind of the picture jumping, and it kind of does an automatic zoom as you're doing some of these functions. It takes a little while to get used to that. I understand why it does it, but it's a little disconcerting at times. So I'm changing up my color a little bit on this image and made it a little bit more faded. And then I'm going to hit my apply button. That will take me back to Photoshop. And it'll take just a few seconds to do its exporting. And then we're going to add a couple of textures. So there is our kind of faded, the fog, just kind of give it a little more faded look than fogginess. But I'm going to drag in one of my textures, and I'm going to turn this one so that the darker area is at the bottom. And I like to just grab the little arrow and swing it around. And then we're going to stretch it to cover our image. And this one I'm going to do at soft light and about 77%. And somebody asked me a few times, I've had the question, well, why do you end up with these odd percentages? Why 77? Why not 75? When I'm moving a slider and I like the way it looks, that's the number it happens to be. So if you want to work with even numbers, you most certainly can. I just end up wherever I end up when I like it. So the next one we're going to bring in is one of my alcohol inks textures. I use this one quite a bit. And this one we're going to change also to soft light and about 42%. And again, if you turn them on and off, you can see the before and after. We're just giving it that real kind of faded look. And I'm going to bring in one of my other dark frame textures. These also come as brushes as part of the set. And again, I'm going to change the color. I don't want it to be black. I actually want to change it to white. So I'm hitting the letter D on my keyboard. Will change this back to black and white. I'm over here on the left. And then the X will flip it so that white is my foreground color. And then I'm going to do like we did before. I'm going to hold my Shift, Alt, Backspace. Oh, I keep forgetting because I dragged it in as a smart object. I have to rasterize it first. So Shift, Alt, Backspace. Alrighty. And so now, of course, we don't quite want it to be that bright. Going to change the opacity. I'm going to leave the blending mode at normal, but I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 55. I just wanted to give it a faded look on the border here. And then I decided to add one more texture to kind of tie it all together. And this is one of my leaf watercolor. I call it kind of looks like leaves to me, so that's how I named these. These were created in Photoshop with brushes. And this one I'm going to change to soft light at 60%. And there you go. So that is the finished version there. And I just really liked the, you know, faded vintagey kind of look. It just fits with it. It has some like the scratches in here. And so that one is done. Now we're going to get to the sky replacements. This just, first time I saw it, just totally blew my mind. So I'm going to open my image, and this is a very boring sailboat image. This was taken in Long Island Sound when I was in Connecticut. Just totally, you know, blah sky, almost sunset, but not a whole lot going on that day. So I've duplicated my background layer, and we're going to go into Skylum. And we're going to do a couple things before we get to the sky replacement, so you can see some of the other settings here. So in that Essentials tab, as soon as it pops up, I'm going to go into Light, and I'm going to turn off the looks because we don't need those, so we can see this a little bigger. I'm going to change the temperature just a teensy bit. The highlights, 15, shadows, 10. About there. And then under the advanced settings, and these things like kind of pop up and go away. You just kind of have to scroll around there. I just brought over this top right point just a hair. I just wanted to brighten up that sky. Even though there's nothing there, we just wanted it to be a little more balanced. So then I'm going to go into AI structure. And we're going to bring that up a little bit. About there. And we're going to boost it even a little more. So we brought in a lot more detail to that. And then details enhancer. This one, we're going to go. This is kind of like the same thing in Topaz, the detail. There, and medium just a little bit. So we're just really crisping this up a bit. And then I'm also going to go into denoise. And under the luminosity denoise, we're going to bring that up and get rid of some of that noise in the background. All right. And then we're going to go to the fun one. So we're going to click on the Creative tab. We are going to go to AI Sky Replacement. You can choose under Sky Selection. There is a slew of skies that come in this program. I'm using one of my own, and it actually remembers it because it's the last one I've used here. Normally, I would just click on Load Custom Sky Image, and this is the folder I'm working out of, so I'm just going to choose my red and blue. And very quickly, okay, there it goes. Took a little longer than usual. Just like that, we have a new sky. There's two best things about this. Number one, it makes selections that I have not found any program that could select thin wires like this. If you look at it, it didn't miss a beat here. even Topaz Remask, as good as that is, cannot do this. The other thing that I love about this is you'll notice that it didn't just replace the sky, it adjusted the color of the rest of the image to match it. And you can, from here, if you need to move the horizon, it looks for the horizon for you. You can move the horizon you can blend it more, you can move the position of it a little. I'm going to choose to even relight this scene a little more. It defaulted to 20. I'm going to bring it up and add even a little more color to the water so it really picks up that sky color. It's just, the first time I saw it, I was like, holy moly, this is just amazing. The other cool thing that you can do is under the color styles. LUTs are what are called lookup tables. I have not used these a ton. It's a phrase a lot of you may not have heard, but it's almost like using a preset. So you can see these all come with the program, and as I hover them, it will change the color tones of the image. So it's like different presets. You can get creative stuff, there's cross-processing, you know, some that are geared towards portraits. So if you wanted to change the look of your image even more, you could do that. When you're done, just hit apply. It'll bring us back to our Photoshop.
One important question.
One important question, Dave says.
I want to know how you add your looks or your images to.
How I added my image.
How you add them into.
You can't add them to the program. You would just, and I'm going to do one more so you can see me do it again. Under the sky, it's exporting, so I can't do it now. But under the sky replacement at the bottom of that list, it says load custom sky. Just click on that and go to wherever you have your folder of skies. I just had some skies sets released recently, and I know a lot of you guys have those. So you can choose from those, you can choose from your own skies, or you can use the ones that come with the program. And I'll show you that again when we get to the next one where that is at. And just like that, we've went from that to that. Amazing. I think it's just absolutely fabulous. I will be using this program a lot more. I did become an affiliate for them, so I do have a link. I do not have a current discount code. They don't do as many discounts as like Topaz does and stuff. But as soon as I have something, I will share it. But for now, if you do decide to purchase it or upgrade it, if you do it through my link, I appreciate it because I do make a small commission. The upgrade, when I purchased this one, I think it was like $50 or $60 because I had the previous version. I'll take a look when we're done and see, maybe Hun, you can go to their website to Skylum and see what the full price is while I start this next project. This is my last project, so we're not too far over. It's only 5:06. We're only a few minutes over. I took this last week in our backyard, standing on my back deck. We have a couple of red-tailed hawks that love there's some trees at the back of our property, and one has some bare branches at the top, and they love to sit up there and look for lunch and dinner. And one of them was on the tree and one of them was sailing around, and this was handheld with my 150 to 500 millimeter Sigma lens, and it was backlit so beautifully, as you can see. There were some clouds in the sky. I did not get him in front of the clouds, which actually worked out better because when I did get some with him in front of the sky, it didn't show up that nice, you know, rim light as much. So I'm kind of glad I got this really nice one with the blue sky. But we're going to add some clouds. We're going to do that sky replacement. So let's go back to our Skylum, to Luminar. And we're going to do just a couple of tweaks and then we'll do a sky replacement. And in this one, I just wanted, even though I've already in Photoshop opened up the shadows a little, I wanted to do that just a little bit more. So under light, I went into the shadows and brought that up a little bit more. And then we're going to go to the creative tab This one I actually used one of the skies that are part of this, but I will again show you how to choose one. So when you go under the sky selection, you have all of these skies in here. I wonder what this is. Download new sky images. The full price of Luminar is $67. So it's a relatively inexpensive program, and it's a very powerful program. Dave's looking at it on his phone right now. Limited time offer. So that is a special. So if you use my link, and it is not a subscription. So this is a buy once and you get it forever. And they also have some other, because they have other programs as well. They have Aurora HDR, and there's some other looks and packages you can buy, some other lookup tables. I'm looking at this on his phone. But the program itself is $67, which is not bad at all.
They're saying that they see your screen jumping. I don't.
Yeah, when I move over it, when I'm doing certain things, it kind of jumps a little, and that's just the way this program works, because it's kind of zooming in Windows itself. My screen's not moving, so I'm not sure why. That must be something in the Zoom thing. So for this one, again, if you want to load a custom sky image, you can see it remembers the one that's here. Just click on that load custom, and then you can go to wherever your skies are located. All right. For this one, I am going to use Blue Sky 5. And I thought this one was just great, and I think it's being slow because I'm online. This one worked out great because it actually put this cloud like right around his head, and I thought that was just fabulous. The other thing you can do when you're in here, if you go under the advanced settings, say I needed the light coming from the opposite direction, you can click this little box that says flip sky, and it will flip the sky horizontally. It's processing. It says down here, image processing. It's being a little bit slower. It's usually not this slow, but you can see it's just taken it and flipped that sky horizontally. But I like it the way it was because it was just lined up perfectly for this image. So we're going to go. The one thing I noticed, because there really wasn't a horizon in this image, it left a little bit of space here, but this is where you can take this horizon, the blending, and I'm just going to bring that down to 0, and that will, as soon as it processes, that will go away. Come on.
Is there a way to preview
there we go.
the sky?
Is there a way to preview the skies? You would have to click each one. You can't just, it won't hover and show it to you. But if you click on it, it will put it in there, and you could click another one and put it in there. So we could go to, say, a dramatic sky. They have some really cool ones in here. And it will show you. So you can test them all out. You do just have to click on them to do that. I'm going to go back to the one that I used for this. And then we're going to go back to our Photoshop. And there was just a couple tweaks in here. Actually, I posted this in several Facebook groups, and someone said I should use the dodge tool and brighten up his eye area even a little bit more, which I thought was a good idea. So I'm going to use the dodge tool, and I just went a little bit at about half percentage, just over his beak and his eye. And then when I zoomed in, I noticed there was a little color fringing up there. I used the healing brush, much smaller than that. And I was able to take care of that. So that is our last project. So, okay, Dave said there's lots of questions. So I'm going to put up the sales slide while we're doing that, and you guys can take down the links. I will post this slide in the blog on Thursday as well. So if you don't want to have to try and write all this down, I will do that as well, so you have the direct links, live links. But right now I am doing a sale. I have 2 new texture sets available, which I had in the blog today. Those are 50% off, so they're regular $12. They're on sale for $6. All of the other textures, ebooks, and personal training are 30% off with the code SUMMER30 at checkout. And then again, the notes are just $5, and that's my Topaz affiliate link. You can save 15% with the code Meredith Images at checkout if you use my link, and that's my Luminar affiliate link. And let me get to the chat box and see. Hang on, I'm trying to find the chat box. I had it open before until I got kicked out. Oh, here it is, chat box. Let's see. How much memory does Lumen R4 need? I'm not sure, Karen, on that. I would go to their website. Most of the sites do list that kind of information. I have a really powerful custom-built computer, so I generally don't look at that myself. Let's see what else we got. Thank you to everybody for the compliments. That's the bottom, dear, so I've got to scroll this way. Is there a way to have thumbnails on your desktop so you can see them all? I think that's in reference to the skies. Ronnie asked that. In Luminar, I'm not sure. I haven't tried to do that. Oh, she's saying there is a way. No, there is a way to have thumbnails on your desktop so you can see them all. I think that's a question, and I'm not sure, Ronnie. I do need to look at that where it said to download sky, so I'm not sure if you can do that. So yes, when I add a sky, it automatically puts it behind the subject. It does the masking for you. It's just, I've used this on barns. It's fabulous if you have a tree line and you're trying to do this. I can show you another one really quick. I have another image here that I was going to show you. This one I had a really hard time with trying to mask this tree. So let's go in and I'll show you this one real quick if you guys are hanging with me. It completely, totally blows my mind that it can be that good and work that quickly. Okay, so we're going to go into this tab, do our AI sky replacement, sky selection. I'll just choose something from here. Let's try one of the dramatic sunsets and see what we get. No, I don't like that one. Let's try something else. But you can see how quickly it's changing this. It's amazing. Let's try the dramatic. Oh, that one's nice. So this was one actually I tested, and I needed to flip it because the light is coming more on that side of the image. So we're going to go under advanced settings and flip that sky. And you can see how well it selects everything in here. And you can, if you need to, if you have some gaps, I watched one of their little tutorials and it showed you can do the closed gaps and sky local and do different things that will bring the sky in even further if needed. It's just really fabulous. It's pretty easy to use. I haven't had any issues with that. And, you know, just give it a whirl. I mean, you can, and like everything, there is a free trial if you want to test it out before you buy it. Yes, we're going to cancel that one and go back to this in case anybody needs it. Let's see if we have any other questions. Let's see. What I'll do as well, somebody said they saw it on their phone for $59 for the next 10 hours. So maybe if you, you know, go to their website, you might get a quicker discount like that. And let's see. I believe Luminar does work with Mac. Again, double check on their website. I'm pretty sure it does, though. I think actually when it first came out, it was for a Mac. initially when they had the Aurora HDR, that was Mac only, that I do know. So yes, it would work on a Mac. And then they came out with the PC versions afterwards. Yeah, it's just fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. So let's see, I'm looking and see if there's anything else I should answer now. What I will do is if I print the chat box, and if there are some questions that I think everybody will be interested in, I will post those on Thursday's blog, along with the links for the discounts and the replay. What's that, dear?
Nic filter thing on the bottom of the like Photoshop, screen, the bottom of the screen, like Topaz.
Oh, the Nic, the bar that I had down here. Actually, I think I accidentally. On the bottom of your PS screen. You can move that around. This Nic Selection Tool, you can put it anywhere you want it to be. I just happen to pick down here. But once you have it, you can just drag it to wherever if you want it up at the top, and then hit the little center button to reduce it. And oh, mine actually does jump down here. But usually I think you can put it wherever you want it to be. I kind of like it down here, and then it just stays there, and I just hit that box to open it when I need it. Yeah, it reduces down here, but then wherever you put it is where it will open up.
One more question. So.
All righty, we got one last question.
Change the sky to this Luminar, always get the color density in the rest of the photo. Does it get it right every time?
Jack asked, when you change the sky in Luminar, does it get the color right in the rest of the photo all the time? It does. Everything I've done so far has done a pretty good job, but you do have those tweaks in there where you can adjust it a little bit more if you need to. Like I did with the one in the sunset, you can add more color or take away color, but every one that I've been trying since I've been messing around with it, it's done a dynamite job, and I've been really impressed. So it's definitely something, if you like to do a lot of landscapes, you should have that definitely in your digital toolbox. Alrighty, I think we'll wrap it up. It's 5:20. I thank you guys so much for hanging in there. Again, we will have the recording up probably later tonight, at the latest by morning. You'll get the link tomorrow. It's on my YouTube channel, and I will also post it in Thursday's Tutorial Thursday blog. Thanks so much. I really appreciate y'all being here. Have a great night. Take care.